Hey everybody, welcome to Read It Again's online author series. Today we are with Leila Rafei. She wrote Spring. So, and I'm going to read you her bio because, this amuses me. So, Leila Rafei grew up in Washington, D.C. area and lives in New York. Spring is her first novel. That is all.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I got. Okay, so tell me what you didn't put in your bio.
Well, first of all, I didn't put anything in there. First of all, because I don't have that much. I don't have a lot of like writing credentials other than like small articles that, newsy stuff that I've written.
People list those all the time, but probably yeah, they do.
Okay. Well, I guess I decided not to put any of those in. I think I'm like a really kind of private and like shy person. So I don't, even just having my name out there is kind of like a lot for me. I'm kind of like, should I have used a pen name? But yeah, so what I did not include in there was that I work at the ACLU. I am a writer there too. I write their digital content.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I love my job. I've been there now. Yeah. I live in New York. Well, that's in there. I have a master's degree in Middle East Studies from the American University in Cairo, where I lived for 2 years. And then other than that, I grew up in the DC area. I worked at the World Bank for a while when I was there, and some other nonprofit organizations as well. And yeah, I have a pretty boring life.
Well, you could put, who's that on your lap? You could put him in your bio.
Yeah. This is Bernie.
Hey, Bernie.
He's my puppy. He insists on being on my lap during this interview, but yeah.
That's fine. I
don't mind him.
He's nibbling away.
Yeah. He is. Yeah.
Okay, Leila, can you tell us a little about the Spring?
Sure, yeah. Well, Spring is a novel that's set in Cairo during the Arab Spring of 2011. And it follows 3 fictional characters who are living in Egypt at the time. There's Sami. He's a young college student. He is, he has a girlfriend. He drinks. He has this kind of life that he's not supposed to be living. And he's hiding that from his more conservative mother. And then his mother is another central character, and she lives outside the city in a place called Mahalla. That she is just very anti-revolution. She's kind of watching everything in horror from her town. And she also is dealing with an absent husband, a son who's not answering his phone. And she's just kind of, as you can imagine, a parent not able to reach their child at a time like that would just go insane. So she's already high strung to begin with. And it just kind of, once the revolution starts, her neuroticism, is that her neuroticness?
Yeah.
Kicked into overdrive. And then there's Jamila, who she's kind of like a neutral kind of observer character. She's a housekeeper, and she just kind of watches everything unfolding around her. She watches this kind of like awkward dance between mother and son, and she knows the secrets that they're hiding. They don't know that she knows. And at the same time, she's going through a lot of her own struggles. She is a refugee. She is pursuing resettlement, and resettlement is always a really like long bureaucratic process. That's like a nightmare anyway. It's even harder during the revolution. So throughout the 18-day revolution, she is like walking around town trying to get the documents that she needs to pursue her resettlement case. And at the same time, she has a child on the way. She has a husband who's gone missing after the police came to arrest him. So she has a lot on her plate, but she's kind of like a silent, observer. And they all have different views of the revolution too. Sami is somebody who's dabbling, he was never political to begin with. And once the protests begin, he gets involved. He gets drawn in and kind of discovers a different side of himself during that time. There's his mother, Suad, who, as I mentioned before, is very anti-revolution. She's like anti-change in general. She, she's somebody who's always preaching for stability, and peace and, status quo. And then Jamila, who's just kind of minding her own business and is like, that's cool, but can I get my job done? So yeah, they all have different views, and their lives all intersect during this 18-day time. And I dedicate each chapter to a single character. And there's 18 chapters, one for every day of the revolution. So it just kind of follows, it's like a day by day take on the revolution through each of the characters' eyes, one at a time.
Which was your favorite character to write?
Definitely Suad, who's Sami's mom. Yeah, she's my favorite.
Lemon trees.
Sorry?
With her lemon trees.
Yeah, she's my favorite for a lot of reasons. But first of all, because I originally started writing her as this kind of like villain character who is, she's out to ruin everybody's fun and like anti-revolution. So I didn't get into her being like, she's going to be the heroine of the story. But I think that freed me up a little bit to kind of get more real when I was like trying to characterize her. So I think it brought out a lot of really, intricate details about her character and her backstory. Like, we know the reasons why she is the way that she is. We get more into her past, into her thinking. So I really enjoyed writing her. And then the theme of, her lemon trees, that was fun to write about too. I knew nothing about gardening at the time, which is funny because I have gotten so into plants since the pandemic started. I'm obsessed with plants and gardening and dirt and stuff now. But when I was writing the story, I really knew nothing. So I like Googled basic stuff about gardening and weeding and lemon trees and stuff, and made up a lot of stuff. And so I hope it's correct, but sorry if it's not.
Well, I love the part in the book where she escapes to the garden because her mother-in-law is watching soap operas from the night in the house.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Where'd you get the idea for the book?
The idea came from a lot of different places. First of all, I lived in Cairo during the Arab Spring, and that was just such a, as you can imagine, powerful thing to experience. I knew, like, I came back from Cairo when I finished my master's degree there. I was kind of like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And, I worked in a lot of jobs that I hated. And, but I was always trying to think, like, what if I write? Because I had always wanted to be a writer. And I was just trying to think of an idea of something that I could write about. And of course, I felt like it couldn't not be about Egypt, Egypt just inspired me so much. It was such an important place in my life, in my like development as a person. So I knew it had to be about Egypt. And if it's going to be about Egypt, it has to be about that 18-day revolution. And, so I think I knew the setting, and the story kind of came to me later. I feel like that's the opposite of how a lot of stories get written. I think usually you're supposed to have like the characters in mind.
I think people start with the setting, especially when the setting almost becomes a character in your book. So
yeah.
Would you say there are really 4 main characters in your book?
Definitely. I definitely think that Cairo is a very central character in the book. It's just such an amazing city, and it's, I'm sure not a lot of the descriptions of it are, flattering. There's a lot of talk about like the pollution and the trash and all of that, but Cairo is great and it's beautiful and it has all of that, but it's also, it's so historic. It's just it feels like New York City, but way better actually. And, it feels like New York in that it's just this mega city, where millions of people collide, and there's so much history, and then there's so much happening in the present. You feel like there's a billion different novels happening around you at any given time. So Cairo definitely was its own inspiration. And then I think I just pieced it together based on like personal experiences that I had, people that I encountered. I kind of like fit them all in to this story that I had set against that revolution backdrop.
Where in Cairo was your favorite place to visit?
Um, I just love downtown Cairo. That's actually like near Tahrir Square is where the revolution, well, Tahrir is where the revolution happened.
Mm-hmm.
And downtown Cairo just really feels like a time warp in a way because all the architecture is really old. It's kind of European style architecture, but everything's like caked in grime and pollution and stuff. But it has this very quaint charm, and like there's all these like very old fashioned bars and cafes, and it feels really, it feels, I don't know, Egyptian cinema is kind of a big thing, and it just really feels like the golden era of Egyptian cinema. And I also would read a lot of Naguib Mahfouz's books, and he's a very famous Egyptian author, and it would just feel like I was walking around in the settings of his books when I was there. It's just a very historic place.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, writing your book, did you plot it all out, or did you write by the seat of your pants? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I did both. I think like I have to have some kind of plotting, otherwise like I'm way too scatterbrained. Like I would have never gotten anything done if I hadn't had some kind of idea of where it was going. So I did have a general idea, but it changed a lot. Like throughout the course of writing, I really changed the story. It really took on its own form as I was writing it. Characters, were born and grew that I didn't have in mind when I first started. So yeah, I would say it's both.
What was the hardest scene to write in your book?
Protest scenes are actually really hard to write.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I was there at the time, I did have like a protest light experience. Like I went to a couple of demonstrations, but it wasn't really like, I wasn't like in the thick of it when things were really dangerous. But they're really hard to write. It's just really hard to capture a moment like that. Mm-hmm. I feel like you almost have to get really kind of abstract and artistic to capture it, because otherwise it's like, what are you going to write about? Like millions of people around you and tear gas. It's just kind of like, it doesn't really adequately capture the moment.
What was your easiest scene to write?
The easiest?
Yeah.
I think anything with Suad, actually. I really tapped into that character for some reason. I think like coming at a character from a place where you know that she's flawed to begin with really just frees you up. You're not really as conscious about like, I feel like it's almost kind of fake when you have a character in mind who's supposed to be the good guy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really feel as genuine sometimes when you're trying to characterize them, because nobody's really like that. Nobody's like all good or all, heroic in real life. So I think I was just more free to write her character, and I was able to tap into her psyche more, I think, than the other characters. So yeah, I think her scenes came very easily to me, because once I like figured out what kind of character she was, everything just flowed very easily. And she's not that different from mine. It turns out she's very neurotic. She's very obsessive. Mm-hmm. So I think like we have a lot of similarities. So maybe that teaches me something about myself.
Well, the next question was going to be, did you secretly write any of your friends or family into your book?
Friends or family, no. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was definitely inspired by people that I had come across or like experienced. Mm-hmm. But nobody like friends or family, maybe like, tangentially a little bit, but, it's really hard to say, because sometimes like characters are inspired by real people, but they're still their own character. You can't be like, oh, well, that's you, because it's not. It's just kind of like a person might have given me an idea for somebody, and I just made everything up from there,
So growing up, what did you like to read growing up?
I read a lot. I read like, when I was a kid, I loved Roald Dahl books a lot. That was probably what got me into reading and writing as well. I especially loved The Witches. That was like my, I think that was the book that really got me into Roald Dahl, but I read all of his books, and he's just such a magical writer. I remember feeling just so good whenever I would read something of his. And like, I remember having a third grade teacher who would read to us in class, and it was always Roald Dahl books. Well, most of the time Roald Dahl. And so I really credit her for that. And then I read a lot of, not very highbrow stuff like Sweet Valley High.
Oh, they're so huge. They're huge now.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet Valley High and A Babysitter's Club.
Yeah, I read Babysitter's Club, Sweet Valley High, Saddle Club, because I was really into horses too. There's some other horse series. I just read a lot. All those series books. I went through all of them. Goosebumps. I loved Goosebumps.
Yes. Love Goosebumps. Yeah. So have you been reading lately? Anything interesting?
Yeah, actually. So I haven't been reading as much as I normally do during the pandemic, which, as it turns out, is like almost the good part of a year now. But yeah, I think I am about to start a book called Celestial Bodies by Joka El-Harthi. It's a Man Booker Prize winner. Oh, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. I love Booker Prize novels usually. Like, I read The Vegetarian by Han Kang, and it was amazing. I love that book. And the last one I read was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. And I loved that too. He's such a beautiful writer. His lines are just so poetic. I feel like he's really good at capturing a mood, a feeling. So, but in general, I've been a lot slower than I usually.
Well, I mean, is there anybody you would credit as like a big influence in your writing?
I mean, I would say Roald Dahl, just because.
I love that.
Yeah, because as a kid, that was really just what got me into writing and reading. And I remember I think I was in third grade when I started reading Roald Dahl books. And I remember even like I would start writing stories at that age too. And they were usually kind of similarly weird and surreal. Like, I would write about like haunted Barbie dolls, and like it was a little Goosebumps, a little Roald Dahl too. But yeah, so Roald Dahl. And then as I got older, I think that I love Vladimir Nabokov. I love Lolita.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just such an amazingly written story. It's obviously problematic. I think, I love that about it. I love that it's like, The Vegetarian is also a really messed up book, but that's what's great about it. But yeah, the writing, I think, the writing in Lolita just really blew me away. And when I think about like writing, I think about the way that story is written.
Well, here we go. You've always been a phenomenal writer.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay.
So are you working on anything now?
Yeah, I just actually submitted revisions for my second novel. Yeah, the second novel is a modern day retelling of the ancient Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris. So again, Egyptian inspired, but this time it's a lot more surreal. It's, it's really different.
When's that due out?
I don't know. I think that we are just finalizing the manuscript right now with my agent, and then we'll see,
Chop around.
I'm kind of like not rushing to get it out because of COVID. I'm like, you know what? If it takes a few years.
Just came out, so you've got time. How long did it take? Did it take you to write? Was it shorter? Okay, what was easier to write, Spring or your new one?
Spring.
Your new one.
Yeah, Spring was easier because in a way, it was easier. It was harder, of course, because it was the first novel that I had written. So I was really figuring some things out as I was going. But I think I had a lot more drive to finish it. So I really dedicated like all of my time to either working on it or thinking about it. I was really lucky that at the time I had a really like non-demanding job. So I was just constantly like daydreaming about my novel. So yeah, I just like, I feel like I breezed through the first novel. It wasn't easy, but I
How
just
long did it take you to write it?
it took me like a year, I think, to finish the manuscript.
Uh-huh.
Well, it took me like a few months to write a really bad first draft of the manuscript, but probably a year to polish it. And then a little bit more time revising it. But yeah.
Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Yeah, I think that for me, like I had always felt really overwhelmed by the thought of writing a novel. I was like, I love writing, but I had always just written short things, short stories, poems, papers for class. Like, the thought of writing a whole novel was like, would I even begin? But I realized that, at least for me, the key is just write, just, get
Down.
what's in your head on paper. And it doesn't matter if it's nonsense. It doesn't matter if it sounds dumb or whatever. Like, just fill pages, because that's the hardest part, is just filling the page. And then I think once you have words on paper, then you can go back and like think about the story, think about the way that it sounds. But the first step is really just like regurgitating everything in your head.
The cover. I love you've got this bright, beautiful, like cheerful like color of the cover on your the color of your cover is like really bright and cheerful, and then you have a grenade. Is it a tear gas grenade?
And it's supposed to be tear gas.
Yeah. How did the cover come about?
Well, I was working with Blackstone's designer, and I was, really lucky that I had a say in it, because I've heard that a lot of authors don't get a say at all. So it was really fun. We got to, collaborate a lot on that. And I had ideas coming into it that I realized were really kind of cliche and not really interesting ideas. So he came up with some mock-ups, and this was actually the first one he showed me. And I remember thinking, I like it, but can you do all these other things? So I asked him to do a bunch of other stuff. And then in the end, we, of course, ended up going back to this one because it was the best. I think I just needed to see a million other options to like finally accept it. But yeah, I think this one was just, it's very simple. It's very, like it really pops. I also like exhausted the graphic designers at my office too. I was like showing them all the covers, like which one's best, and they all love this one.
Are those lemon seeds?
Yeah, they could be seeds. I was thinking like petals, but I guess seeds makes more sense. What even are petals? Yeah. I don't think petals are a factor in the story at all, but yeah.
No, I like it. That's good. In fact, when I first saw it, I was like, ooh, that looks good. Yeah. So, okay, so we went over what you've got coming up next and what you're reading. What does your typical writing day look like?
I write on the weekends only, and I wake up really early. I wake up like 5 or 6 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. And, staying up late isn't a problem for me because I just don't require a lot of sleep, I guess. Like I can get up, like 3 hours after I go to bed if I have to. But so I wake up really early, and because my mind is just the sharpest in the morning. So I'll write all day until like late afternoon. And yeah, and I think the reason why I only do weekends is because I just need like the full day ahead of me. I can't think like I'm on a timeline or anything. And still to this day, I think like even when I'm writing for work, like I can't write in these little short windows between meetings. Like it needs to be like, even I'll wake up early to like write something before work a lot of times, just because for some reason my brain just works better when I like am not really constrained by time that much. So yeah, I would have this kind of rigid schedule, and it was hard for some friends to like cope with because yeah, like I can't answer the phone when I'm writing. I can't even answer the door if I'm writing. Like,
well, nobody answers the door anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes like, sometimes.
If I hear my doorbell ring, I think it's an emergency. Like, why would somebody be at my door? In fact, honestly, I disconnected my doorbell.
Really?
That's what dogs are for.
I mean, it's important for me because I get a lot of takeout. So doorbell's very central in my life now. But yeah, I'm very like, I cannot be interrupted because it'll just throw off my train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of people would think that I was ignoring them, but I would just say I'm writing. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand unless they're writers themselves that like, it's really hard to just set things aside even for like a moment.
Mm-hmm.
That could just throw you off for the whole day. So.
No, but that's awesome. You have the focus and you know that you need to write like that. And so you do it because I don't know, I'll have like 5 projects going on at the same time and it's stressful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So
you're writing 5 novels or
no projects like having a store. I'm not a writer. I just talk to writers.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about time to wrap it up. Thank you, Leila, for joining us. Do you mind sending us some autographed book plates?
Sure.
Do you have an indie bookstore that you like to shop at in Brooklyn? You go to Word?
Is that a place?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Brooklyn, I really like Bookstore Magic. I like I love the Strand in Manhattan as always. And there are a lot of good bookstores.
There are really a lot of good. There's a recent documentary about bookstores in New York that I need to watch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it talks. Well, there used to be hundreds, and now there's like 100 or 60. Yeah, it's not a lot, but there used to be so many because there was a whole street dedicated to booksellers.
Wow. So, I feel like there's a lot more here though than other places I've been. So, and DC too, I think. I mean, DC definitely has fewer bookstores, but there were a couple really good ones there too. There's like Busboys and Poets and Politics and Prose.
Yeah. Some good stuff. Okay, so everybody needs to buy Spring by Leila here. We have some on order. I don't think they've arrived yet, but you should buy it. You should either buy it from us, which is where I prefer you to buy it, or you can buy another bookstore like Politics and Prose. And where else did you mention? Oh, Books Are Magic. Love them. So as long as you support an independent bookstore, that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be us, but I prefer it to be us. Thank you, everybody, for watching. When your next one comes out, we have to do this again. I really,
Sure.
I can get my sci-fi book club to read it. If it's kind of like, is it magical realism type thing?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah. That's I love that stuff.
If you know the story of Isis and Osiris, it's kind of gross too. So, but yeah, very magical realism.
I don't know it, so I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you like it too.
It might be a while because you're not in a rush. Maybe next year.
No, yeah. Year after, we'll see.
Can I see Bernie before we go?
Yes. Bernie was just passed out.
Yeah, I bet he's like, I'm sleepy, mommy.
Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.